Hello, everyone. Welcome to Teacher Development Webinars. I welcome you all at Teacher Development Webinars. My name is Zamanullah Sand. I facilitate virtual programs at Teacher Development Webinars. So good to see you. We have people from UAE, KSA, Thailand, Pakistan, Myanmar, Cairo, Philippines, Hungary. Wonderful audience. Teacher Development Webinars is a social action project to support teachers and educators around the world with professional development opportunities. It is an initiative using the rise in online professional development to connect people from around the world with opportunities which they may not have had due to old normal of face-to-face conferences. And now, in this webinar, Learning to Read, Letters and Sounds Matter, we'll learn some graphophonic strategies, the link between symbols and sounds to learn to decode language, the value of loan words, cognates, and blending sounds to make words. I pray and privilege to introduce Wendy Arnold for this webinar. Wendy Arnold, MA in English, MA in Teaching English to Young Learners, has 30 years experience in ELT as a teacher, trainer, materials development, developer, a curriculum designer, researcher, and consultant to ministries of education. Wendy is the director and co-founder of ELT Consultants. She has a special interest in contexts which do not use the Roman alphabet like Arabic, Lao, Chinese, and learning to read. We are pleased to have you at Teacher Development Webinars. Wendy, welcome to Teacher Development Webinar.
Thank you. Well, it's lovely being here and very much an honor to have been invited. Thank you very much. It's very nice. And what a multicultural group. Fabulous, fabulous. And well done, Amanullah, for having this wonderful innovation. Okay, so let me know when you want me to start. Can everybody hear me? Amanullah, you're just breaking up a little bit. I'll just get going, shall I? Okay, great, thank you. But yes, you can hear, great. Okay, let's get going. So I hope everybody can see my screen. Can you just use the chat box to let me know that the screen is visible? There we see everybody. Let me see. For some peculiar reason, let's see, I'll do it like that.
Yes, we can see.
Brilliant. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for introducing me. And I don't think there's anything else that I need to add from Amanullah's introduction, except that my special interest has always been early literacy. I learned to be a teacher with Chinese first language children, and I realized straight away that learning to read in English was actually an incredibly complex cognitive skill, and I'll explain why. All right, so my company actually has been going for more than 10 years, and we now have 55 associates all over the world. Two of my recent projects, which I'm very proud of, were for the British Council. One was developing a 35-hour course, which I believe is going to be online soon, to train English language teachers and radio program producers to write educational radio programs. You can imagine with the latest pandemic, there are a lot of children who are not accessing education because they don't have broadband. So radio is a very important media. And also a countrywide primary teacher training program in Tunisia, and we trained over 5,000 teachers in a 5-day, 30-hour course, which I'm very proud of as well. All right, so why do we do this? Well, we believe in teachers helping teachers and giving back policy. So we win a lot of projects, they're fee earning, but we like to give back as well. You can read more about that on our website. All right, so at the end of this webinar, I hope you're going to take away, if you don't already know, what exactly is reading, why it's important to use cognates, the value of loan word cognates, and blending sounds to make words. Very important skills that need to be taught. So let's start off with, and please use the chat box. Can you just very quickly go back into your mind and think about what exactly is reading and what strategies do we need to use in order to read? And I'm just going to be having a quick look in the chat box to see what you're saying. Because learning is developing on your background knowledge. So I want you to reflect on what you think reading actually is in your language, not necessarily in English, just what is reading and what kind of strategies do you need to use in order to be able to read? I'll just give just a little few minutes for you to have a quick think about that. Okay, thank you. Yeah, interpreting symbols to deduce meaning, skimming and scanning, choosing the correct level, letters into words, grammar, prawn. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, lots and lots and lots of fantastic ideas. Okay. Very important always, whether you're doing a webinar or a workshop or teaching in the classroom, build on what your audience already knows. So let's have a look at what I have got as well. Reading is basically two strategies. One is the decoding, which is the sounding out, which is explicitly knowing that the symbols, in the case of English, we have letters, but you all come from very, very different backgrounds where your symbols are not letters. Words are sounds blended together to have meaning, and blending is decoding text, saying words out loud. And the second strategy that needs to be taught explicitly is encoding, which is making the meaning, okay, using visual or textual literacy. So there are two very, very different skills that need to be taught explicitly. Now, I specialize in foundation years. So at whatever stage a learner starts to learn English. So that could be in secondary, but most of the time now it's in primary. And without a strong foundation of understanding what reading is, your learners are going to fail. And unfortunately, I am seeing a lot of failures because children are not being taught explicitly. You can't catch reading, you have to be taught it explicitly in every single language, okay? Do not make the assumption that somebody else has done the hard job of teaching your learners to read. If you look at the PISA results, which are done for 15-year-olds, you can very quickly see that early literacy in some places is not being done terribly well, and learners in their first language are not literate enough to be able to understand the symbols in their first language, little less a second language. Right. The second lot of questions: what is a cognate? What does that mean to you? And why do you think a cognate is important when you learn a language? Just have a quick think what that is. Just waiting, please use the chat box. The encoding, the reading is simplified as meaning more evident. Culture, a word that has a similar spelling in your language. Could be that, Rigoberto. Yeah, yes, it's there is no right or wrong answer at this stage. And again, I tend to train in the same way that I teach. So very important just to put out whatever is in your mind. Okay? Language is the tool of thought. So at this stage, I just want you to share whatever pops up in your mind, just say it. Because then what we do is we build on what you know. You might change your mind about what you thought before, but this is all part of a learning process we all need to go through. It's much simpler than that. And all of you, when you see what it is that I'm talking about, you're going to go, oh, because I suspect that many of you have got these charts, these posters in your classrooms. Let's have a look.
So,
Amanullah, you want to say something?
yeah, Ilana says a cognate is a word that is the same in both L1 and L2. And Kara says cognates are words that have a common etymological origin. And Pakistan says it is connection. And I'm reading some of the YouTube comments.
All right, lovely. Good. All right, let's have a look. Cognate is a visual that starts with the same sound as a spoken word that the student knows in a language they're confident in. How many of you have seen posters, charts that start with, for the English alphabet, A is for apple, B is for ball? Why do you think there's a picture and a word for the letters of the alphabet? Let's have a look on the chat box. Why do you think in those charts with the alphabet, they give an example with a picture and a word? What is it about having a picture and a word that helps you? Have a think about that. Yes, Cynthia, yes. So that you can relate the letter and the initial sound, okay, and under sound, so that the learners at whatever age can look at that picture and think, apple. Now, there is a slight confusion with many teachers when I speak to them about graphophonics and phonemic awareness, and they say, oh yes, but my learners know their ABC. Does knowing the name of the letter help you to say the word? Have a think about that. Yes, Gulkim, no, it doesn't. If you thought that the name of the letter, which is A, would help you to be able to say the word apple, it's very misleading. So in English, and I don't think it's just in English, it's in many languages, a letter or a symbol has a name and it has a sound. The sound is the most important for a learner to be able to start to decode language. Yes, sometimes the sound is different, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but because this is a very complex subject, I am just doing the simplest of a webinar today. But what I want to, the names of the letter won't help you at all. It will help you with dictionary work and an order, but it will not help you at all to be able to say the word. Doesn't help you with spelling particularly either. Now, in many contexts, I see teachers getting learners to memorize whole words or lots and lots of paragraphs, and then they do dictation. So in some languages that works. So for example, I know that learning to read in Chinese is done through writing and copying and copying and copying and copying. That's because of the way that Chinese works. It's not symbol and sound. It's very, very different. But if you are in a context where the symbols in your language are sounds, for example, Arabic is a beautiful language that the symbols are sounds, then this concept, you need to make sure that your learners understand that the letters in English are also sounds. And this is something that is very, very often totally ignored by teachers, or they assume somebody else has done it. Some languages which also use letters, the same letter might have a completely different sound from English. So in a way, languages that use different symbols, not letters, are easier. The learners find it easier to then learn English and not be confused with, oh, in my language, that letter is this sound, and now in English, it's that sound. That causes more confusions than having a completely different symbol. And using cognates is important because it aids memory recall. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Okay, so this is something that when I teach and I train, I get my learners to make their own cognate chart. And it could be something in their first language. It could be a word in their first language that has that sound, just to help them remember what that sound is in English. Right, now let's start with cognates. So it's a visual of a word, and I have got a very naughty cat who's going to come and jump on me. Go away. Remember that a cognate is a trigger to make your brain go, ah, that sound. Now, what I do in my training is I use the UK's national literacy program, which is called Letters and Sounds. This is based on research, and interestingly, have a look. I hope this is big enough. Have a look at my chart, which is here on the right-hand side. What do you notice about this chart? And just write that in the chat box. There's something. Aha, okay, Lisa. Yes. Okay. So, pictorial, yes. Letters not in alphabetical order. Pictures look like the first letter of the word, refers to the sounds that letters make. Yep. So, what they found when they did research into language acquisition of, and now this is first language acquisition, but to be honest, first language acquisition learners, they're going through the same process as second language acquisition learners do as well, especially young learners. What they found was that there was a frequency, high and low frequency of sounds in English. And so children in the UK and actually international schools all over the world that are learning English will usually learn in this order, which is the high frequency sounds in English first, which is sat, p, in, sat, pin. All right. And there's a good reason for this, because as soon as you can automatically get those high frequency sounds, letters and sounds, and make that link between the letters and the sounds, you can start to blend at a very simple level. But remember, it's the concept that you want the learners to understand. Now, before we start to get into the complexities of English and digraphs and diphthongs and, all the irregularities, the concept is what your learners need to understand. All right, so one of the things that I have further developed as I've gone through my very long career doing this is that if you use, now, for example, my chart is using English words. Okay, my letters and sounds are English words. Now, what I've realized is that this can cause a learner with their first language, the word having a different sound at the beginning, causes them terrible, confusions. There's a very famous, I don't know if you've heard of Jolly Phonics. Yes, yes, yes. The first set in Jolly Phonics. Thank you for mentioning. Thank you for mentioning Jolly Phonics. Yes, it's not just Jolly Phonics. There are lots of different of these programs. Now, I think for native English speakers, yes, Jolly Phonics works really well. But when you transfer it to another context and you start doing A is for apple, but actually apple in the first language for, let's say, French children is pomme, that causes a huge problem for those learners, because it's like you're introducing a new word and linking it to a sound, but in the first language, that word starts with a different sound. So what I've been experimenting with, and so far it's started to seem to make sense, is to try to find words which have the same meaning and the same initial sound in the first language of a learner, or a language that they're strong in, and English. And it is actually possible. So let's have a look. Let me give you an example. So for example, the word, here's my visual, that's a moon. So if I was teaching the sound for moon, but in French, that word is lune. That causes huge complexities for a learner, because you're teaching them something they already know. They know in French, their first language, that that's a loon, but you're saying it's a moon, two different sounds. So that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Now, English, microphone. French, microphone. That does work. That does work. Now, what you might find is the English are very good at borrowing words from other languages, and or other languages are very good at using English words. So that's usually a good match. And so it would work in Turkish then. Moon is I in Turkish. You see, that wouldn't work at all. No, that wouldn't work, would it? All right. So let's have a look here. In English, it's sun. In French, it's soleil. Perfect. That one works. So I just want you to think. I want you to have a quick think about a word in English and your language that could be a cognate. So it starts with the same sound and it has the same meaning. You just write that in the chat box. So in Turkish it would work, wouldn't it? Microphone and microphone, yeah. Cotton, so that's a nice k. Spanish is lovely, yeah, sun and sol. Ball and bong, yeah, Vietnam would work. Color, yeah, and color, yeah, that works. Arabic, is that banana, Kamis? Doctor, yeah. Spanish is lovely. Spanish is actually one of my first languages. I was born in Peru, so I learned Spanish probably before I spoke English properly. Yeah. Okay. Now, a sound that is incredibly difficult for many speakers of English is the like throne or think or teeth. That the river English rev Arabic. Yes. So you can see already that there are cognates. Now, I'm sure you can't do it for every single word, but what I'm suggesting is that you try and get your learners to make their own cognate chart. And if they're older learners, perhaps you could get them to do it on their own. If they're younger learners, you probably have to do it as a whole class. Choice is very important in learning. So if they didn't want to, for example, use sun, and they have another example for a sound that works, you know, in both languages, let them choose their own. Choice is really important. A cognate is obviously better if it's a noun, because you can draw it. You might have difficulty sometimes, so it could be perhaps an adjective. For example, red and rojo, Spanish and English. So have a think about how your learners could make one of these cognate charts for themselves. So when I was teaching, I taught for 15 years, grade 1 to grade 6. All my learners, starting from grade 1, had their sound book. And in their sound book, they would draw pictures with the sounds of words that they knew in English and in their own language. Okay, so start it really early, because unless the teacher explicitly teaches them that a letter is a sound, they are not going to catch it. And then there are lots of activities you can do with that. For example, Simon says. I always change that to teacher says, because I don't know who Simon is. All right. So we've got wealth is tharwa, wealthy tharwa. Okay. Okay, so you do in Arabic, you do have the th. Some languages don't have it, and it does cause problems. Right, let's go to the next one. You've actually told me about this already. You have noticed it. But these are based on the order of the high frequency sounds in English. You can Google letters and sounds, UK National Literacy Strategy, and you will immediately get straight to that, and you will be able to see what they have done. All the materials there are free. And so this came out in 2007. I spotted it in 2009, and I have been working on it since then. But I have realized that using the cognates in English does not work. So just transferring materials that come from English native speakers will not work. So you need to help your learners to try and find something that works in 2 languages, okay? So here is the chart that my learners are given, and they have to draw their pictures. And this is to get that automaticity of the sounds. And why do they need this? Now, you start off with lots and lots of listening. Listening is incredibly important in all languages, long before you start with the symbols, because the learner has to have a database inside their heads of words they can recall and use. So listening and speaking is the foundation of a language. Very, very important. And then when you introduce the symbols that represent what you say, then it starts to make meaning, because these symbols are just man-made inventions of sharing information in a different way using, reading skills. So let's have a go at the cognates. Let's decode a word, blending the letters and the sounds. So start off with, what sound do you think this is? Let's have a look. Ooh, Arabic, 28 letters and 84 sounds. Whoa, that's worse than English. What? Okay, I know. Ah ha ha. Well done. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it could have been bug, bug. Uh, but I have actually introduced this as insect. Insect. If you look at a chart, a poster that is used for native speakers, it's usually got igloo, which is just such a low frequency word, you know, that children, the chances of igloo being something that they would recognize is so low. So I think insect is more useful. And then, of course, you can introduce the concept of insects having 6 legs. How do you know it's an insect? Well, it's got 6 legs, and it's got 3 parts of its body. So you then bring in another, cross-curricular aspect, a bit of biology into that. But it's a sound. The only other word, an insect works with Spanish. I don't know what insect. Ink. When was the last time you actually saw ink? Now I did, because I'm so old. We had ink pens that you had to fill up, fountain pens that you had to fill up with ink. But our children in the 21st century, my grandchildren, they don't know what ink is. So you have to think about what words in English and in your language you could introduce with the sound I, 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 I. See, the other one that I quite like is in. But that doesn't work with lots of languages, because you need to try and find one that works with the child's strong language or the learner's strong language and English. Okay, so that is my I. And this one, what do you think that is? Yes, Cynthia, información. In Spanish, that would work. The only problem with información is, how would you make a cognate for that? But in Spanish also insecto, so that would work. Okay, it is, yes, Adriana, yes, it's a taxi. Now, again, you would have to think what works best in your language. So then I've got my cognates, and I've introduced my my 2 symbols, and now I'm going to blend. So I've got 2 sounds. Now, very important for our learners who read from right to left, not from left to right. So an Arabic learner, if you showed them this, might well say t, I, t. My Chinese learners definitely try to do that. So again, directionality is incredibly important. So I and t put together, it. And hopefully this will behave itself. Yes, it. So again, you introduce the concept at a very, very simple level. And if I was in, well, if you're teaching asynchronously online, then obviously you can use a PowerPoint. If you're teaching this in a classroom, face-to-face, I would use my Cognate, my picture card, and then introduce my letter card, and then put them together. So the learners can see that linkage, that blending explicitly. Right, let's have another go. So we've got the I already. And now we have our second sound. Yep. I is. Blend together, is. Okay. You do not have to introduce complex examples to get your learners to understand the concept, because a lot of your languages use exactly the same concept in teaching the learners their first language. So have a look at, or maybe you are the classroom teacher and you do have to teach the first language. Use some of the strategies that are taught for first language teaching in your context to show your learners that you can do the same in English, but use blendable words. Don't go and choose something that you know jolly well that you can't blend, because it's one of those tricky words. All right, so we've done vowel and consonants. Now let's have a go at consonant, vowel, consonant. So we've done that already. We've done the I, and we've done the T. Let's put them all together. Sit. Now, when English children are taught how to blend like this, the teacher often uses made-up words, because it's not about the meaning of the words at this point. Decoding, don't worry about the meaning at this point. What you're doing is you're showing the learners that the symbols are sounds, and you can blend those sounds together to decode. Decode is just saying the word aloud. Okay. And this webinar is not about making meaning of these words. It is just simply the concept that letters are sounds. Teaching reading is incredibly complex, and you have to be highly skilled. Yes, Cynthia, yes, exactly. Yes, decoding and blending is the same. Now, another thing that I am experimenting with, so I'm experimenting with two things. One is to try to find loan words from the first language and the second language that have the first sound. The other one is something that many of you might recognize from your first language learning. I know Arabic does it, Spanish does it, and that is children learning a consonant with the vowel together. So, for example, babebi bobu, tatetito tu. So you're learning a consonant and a vowel together. So the vowels are not, there on their own. So let's have a think about that as well, because that's really useful. to, so for example, the sit would be sa, se, si, so, su. That's in Spanish. English doesn't work quite like that because sa is okay, se is okay, si, so is okay, su, no, sa, because English, the U sound is a bit different. Yes, sapo, sapo, exactly, frog, toad. And you have vowels on their own in Arabic. Yep. Oh, okay. Priyanka. Okay, so in Hindi script as well. Yes, exactly. Because the consonant and vowel is the most common productive syllable. Yep, yep. So that's, I'm experimenting with that as well, because I want to know if that works. In which case, you know, you would introduce, you obviously the learners need to know what the individual sounds are, but when they're actually learning, when they're actually sort of trying to do the blending, blend it a consonant with a vowel. Let's see. So I think that very simple concept will help your learners at every age. So it doesn't matter whether they're preschool or, I mean, that's when sounds are really, really started to be introduced, is learners at preschool and early primary. Their teachers will do a lot of activities to help them to hear sounds everywhere, you know, rustling leaves in the trees, the sounds that bees make, the sounds that animals, cats make, dogs make, and then the sounds that humans make. And humans actually giving messages using these sounds to each other. So what we're doing is giving our learners the concept that symbols used in language, whether they're letters or whatever your language is, are used to transcribe what you can say into decodable symbols. That's what they are. So it's obviously not a very simple thing to do. But if you start off at the simplest stage, and then, for example, here are some more ideas about differences. I've just given you one example. What else do you think are the differences between, well, that your learners need to understand between English and their languages? And I say languages because many cultures, children are actually multilingual. You know, before they start to learn literacy skills, letters and sounds or symbols and sounds in their language, some children are already speaking, understanding 2, 3, 4 languages. So what are the differences, do you think? Ah, and Mohammed, you've got another one. Yes, with Arabic. What differences do you think your learners need to understand between English and their languages? So tell me the language you're thinking about and the difference between that language and English. Yep, digraphs are one. Yes, syllables. Yes. I think that's a good one as well. Pronunciation, yes. Grammar, yeah. Word order is one. Yeah. Subject verb agreement, yeah. But always keep in mind the developmental stages of learning. So under the age of 10, do not waste your breath on grammar explicitly, because your learners cognitively are not yet able to take that kind of information in. Foundation skills. Arabic language depends more on the information. Okay, what do you mean by that, Mohammed? Writing conventions, yes. Yeah, so punctuation. So Arabic is quite an interesting one, because when you come to learn to write, you write through the lines. So when I teach children to learn to write in English, I always use 4 lines. My very top one is where the capitals or the ascenders touch. My very bottom one is where the descenders touch. And then the 2 lines in the middle, which is where most of the letters go. Okay. Arabic to Spanish speakers is quite difficult. Oh, is it? I'm surprised at that, because the Spanish has taken on a lot of Arabic words. Urdu, completely different, only vowel sounds are the same. Right, okay. Okay. I would argue, but I have no proof of this, that having completely different symbols is an advantage. Having the same symbols as English, the Roman alphabet, but different sounds for the same letters, I think that's far more difficult. You have language interference comparing Arabic. Okay. Have you seen a book called Learner English? And Michael Swan is one of the editors, and basically they've compared English to, I think there are about 13 different languages, and it tells you exactly what those differences are, which as a teacher I think is incredibly important to know. Your university doesn't give Michael Swan, that's right, yeah. Yes, unfortunately, I will post the name of the book. Well, every single word in English has got to have a vowel sound. That's very important to know. I think a lot of exams, high stakes exams, like the Taojihi and the Gaokao in China, Taojihi, which is sort of Palestinian, Middle Eastern, those kind of high stakes exams do not do their learners much help, in that they focus so much on reading and writing because they're easier to mark, and not on listening and speaking. So they're in effect supporting the teachers in creating deaf and dumb learners, because the listening and speaking is not there. Okay, so let's have a look at what else I wrote. Directionality is one of them. Words that cannot be blended. Yes, we have quite a few tricky words in English that you can't blend. For example, the, because it's the, you know, it's just a tricky, you just have to memorize that one. Digraphs, diphthongs, tenses, punctuation. So that consonant clusters, yes, so they're the digraphs. Yeah. All right, so nearly come to the end of my session. Does anybody have any questions? How to teach tricky words? Well, do have a look at the letters and sounds. Do have a look at the letters and sounds on the Google them And I think what you'll do is you'll find lots of ideas about how to teach tricky words. Good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Wendy. That was very insightful, and I appreciate that. Thanks for wonderful tips and strategies. And I believe that that was especially helpful for teachers who are dealing with young learners. So, moving towards questions, if you have any questions, you are free to post them in the chat. And meanwhile, I have collected some of the questions. Najat from Yemen asks, any advice for good and free offline applications for pronunciation teaching or reading?
Pronunciation, a good model.
Yeah.
Now, but be careful about this. Every single country has its own version of English that is perfectly acceptable. So, for example, there will be a Yemeni version of English. There is a Nepalese version of English. Okay, so please do not think that you have to try and speak like an English person. And actually, I would always argue when people say, oh, no, but I want to have a perfect English pronunciation. And I say to them, okay, do you know how many varieties of English in the UK there are? Which one do you want? Do you want a Scottish one? Do you want a Welsh one? Do you want a London one? Which one do you want? So do be careful and be proud of the version that you have in your country, because it's perfectly acceptable.
Thanks, Wendy. That was so profound. I appreciate that. So a native speaker model is no longer relevant. We are good with Pakistani English. So Pinglish is fine. English is fine. Singlish is fine. So there are so many varieties of English, and all are okay as long as you are comprehensible and you are getting your message across.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is what Stephen Krashen says every time. Comprehensibility. And you are more likely to speak to another speaker, second language speaker of English than you are to a native speaker. So comprehensibility is incredibly important. Priyanka, she has her hand up.
Priya, you can type your question in the chat box and we'll try to answer it. So yeah, there was other question from Lisa from Hungary, and she asked, what ELT materials would you recommend for teaching young EFL runners to read?
Stories. And in fact, I would get the children to start making their own sound book and get the children to start making their own little storybook. Stories don't have to be complicated. They can be just with pictures to start with. What you want to do is to get the learners, visual literacy is really important. So you can make a zigzag book and the learners can tell a story with just the pictures that they draw. So you have visual literacy before textual literacy. And then as they learn to write the words, they can add, or they can ask the teacher, how do I write this? And maybe just have label one word in each of their picture, and the learner then reads their story again. But they have a word in, and just slowly build it up. Keep the motivation going.
So another question, Cherry Angela from Philippines. She asked, how can we teach young learners how to read in a remote learning setting?
I don't think this is a problem at all. I mean, the most important thing, first of all, is, are those young learners being taught to read in their first language? That's important. They need to understand what reading is in their first language. If they don't have that knowledge, how can they possibly do another language? When they understand the concept that those funny squiggles, because let's face it, that's what they look like before you realize that they have meaning, that those squiggles actually are words that you can say. Once the learner has that concept, then you can start to build up, and you build up very slowly, because what you're doing is you're building the foundation for lifelong learning. Do not be in a hurry to do this. You need high skills in teaching literacy at those very, very initial stages. Yes, Gulshan, they need to understand what reading is in their own language. Absolutely. Because if they don't, you're not going to get anywhere. Sound books, little story books. Yeah, zigzag. Yep. I just put the name of the Michael Swan book up there. It's just called Learner English. I'm just trying to see if I can spot it in my library. Yes, I can spot it. I think I can spot it. I'm going to take just 1 second.
So meanwhile, I can read the comments. There's so many appreciation for your session. Wonderful session. Great, Wendy. Hamis, you're welcome. Thank you, Gulshanara. Thanks very much, Priya. Appreciate that.
Sorry, I can't spot it. I can't spot it in my library, but it's just Google Learner English Michael Swan and it'll come up straight away.
Muhammad Vedwan says thanks million. Thank you, Vedwan, for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure. As I say, it is a very simple webinar just to get you thinking. Just to get you thinking about different ways that you can introduce the concept of symbols in English to your learners. All right, thank you. Okay.
Thank you so very much, Wendy. That was wonderful. I enjoyed it, and I hope that so our audience. And if you're interested in sharing this recording will be available on Teacher Development Webinars YouTube channel. So you can share it with your colleagues. And yeah, we are available on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. So do follow us for future webinars. So we'll be coming up with great stuff. And
wonderful.
I would also, like to give you a shout out for this Hands Up project that you are doing with Palestinian children. And I attended a few of the webinars, and so wonderful voices. And in this time, we are making sure that their voices get heard, and they are not missing on many things. So they are going through this troubling times. So yeah, shout out to you and Nick and all the wonderful team for Heads Up project. And in the last, if you would want to leave a message for our, teachers.
Teachers, helping teachers make you stronger. Only teachers can help teachers. Anybody who is a teacher trainer who has never been a teacher does not have the credibility. End of story. If you do not know what it feels like to be in a classroom, making a difference, you should not be training teachers. You should not be. You have no credibility. You have got to know what it feels like. It is a very difficult job, as you all know, but we can make a big change in the world. And we do we are the ones that make doctors and nurses and lawyers, and without teachers, you would not have any other profession. So lovely to speak to all of you and to share some ideas. And it would be very interesting to know if you take these any further forward with the cognates. I'd be very interested to know. Okay, so I am off to have my
Thanks very much.
breakfast. It is 11 o'clock here
Great.
now.
We appreciate that.
Thank you. All right. Cheerio, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
Bye-bye.
I'll see you. So, dear participants, if you are interested in getting a certificate for this webinar, you can write to info.pdwebinars@gmail.com. WhatsApp me. I have shared the WhatsApp details in the chat. And while these webinars are free for everyone to attend, we do have some reasonable amount of certificates. So they'll cost you 300 rupees Pakistani, and if you are from another country for international states, $5, I think. So yeah, thanks very much for attending. I really appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you in upcoming webinars.